I want to start off because the equal pay discussion is so complex. Obviously, when compared to the NBA, there's huge and extreme pay disparities with the WNBA. But you said when people say things like you want equality, that you don't necessarily mean the same money as NBA players, and it's actually more complicated in the sense that you're really talking about equal investment and exposure and really investing in the sport as a whole in a way that hasn't happened before. Can you talk a little bit about this dynamic and how you're looking to break this cycle in terms of lack of investment and lack of opportunity in your sport?
Yeah, I mean, so that's what happens. I feel like it's an easy argument for some people, this easy way to be like, well, you don't deserve the same as the men. Look at the revenue, you know? That's my impersonation. Um, but that's not what we're saying with the WNBA. I feel like in this fight for equal pay, there's all different types of fights. And a lot of times what happens, and obviously I have a front row seat to this, we'll get compared to the US women's soccer team. And that is a different scenario. They're one entity, they're one thing. So to pay the men differently from the women is totally unjust. This is a situation where we're a business. The NBA is a business, the WNBA is a separate business. And what I mean when I say we're not walking into the room and I'm not saying I deserve the same exact money as X, Y, and Z player, it's because it is a business. We understand that. But how do businesses grow? Right? They grow with investment, they grow with exposure, especially with sports. And for women in sports, I mean, the numbers are just insane. They're staggering, the lack of coverage we get. I mean, it's in the single digits. It's like 4% of all media coverage. We only get 4% of that pie. And then recently there was something on Instagram that talked about like ESPN's Instagram page, SportsCenter's Instagram page, Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report, all of them. And it's like still in the single digits. Female athletes only get, 4 or 5% of that coverage. Those are the things that needs to change in order to have a chance at having a successful business.
You bring up such a good point in terms of when people talk about it being league revenues, that's investment in the sport, it's investment in time and media, and it ultimately becomes this really vicious cycle in terms of making it really challenging to be able to grow the sport and to grow the business. You have spent a lot of time, and your new venture is focused on this as well, really investing on the power of media and representation of the sports. If you don't have that coverage and exposure, you don't have that fan base, and also you don't necessarily have the images of female athletes and the role models, which I know you've talked about being so important. Can you talk about that role of media and why it's such a critical dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, the media controls a lot. I think we all could agree, given how our lives have been the last year. And as it pertains to women in sport, there's just, you can't turn on the TV and hear about someone's career or hear a storyline, maybe even hear some drama. That doesn't really exist for our world. Every now and then you might catch a highlight. They might have covered a game and they see like, oh, so-and-so beat so-and-so by 5 points, but you don't get to know the ins and outs. And a lot of what drives sports is those storylines. And I think for a lot of us, we haven't even realized just the consumption we've had for male sports. We know so much about it, but even if you're not a fan, you know so much about it. And so women have really never had that opportunity. And you brought up this production company that I've recently become a part of, founded, called Together. And all the things I talked about before, all the percentages, the small amounts, this is our way, the four of us, myself, Alex Morgan, Chloe Kim, Simone Manuel, of trying to change that landscape. Because all the things we're talking about, it's like, it's optics, it's perception, it's changing that and getting more fans. It's also this aspect of, when I was a little kid, I didn't have female athletes to aspire to be. I didn't really see any till I was like 13, 14, 15,
Which is crazy, right? Crazy that you didn't have that role model even in the basic level. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, and I feel like this element right here goes across like all worlds, not just the sports world. It's like, how do you know what you can be if you can't see it, And so I think that's really the goal of Together. It's to get these stories out for all the reasons I just stated.